Here at Need Project, our mission is healthy families and healthy children through the creation of practical resources and support for parents and caregivers navigating special needs. We want families to thrive, not just survive, and we believe that no other place can support and strengthen these families like God's church. Where else can they see their children loved and included? Where else can they receive the Word of God to refresh their souls and give them the strength they need to face the coming week? Someone said that we may be the only Jesus some people ever see. Understand that for some families, this may be the only time not having to care for their child all week. For others, it may have taken a miracle to show up at the doors of your church or program. What you are doing matters so much to the families you serve and to God. I know it can be a challenge to manage a Sunday school classroom. We're volunteers ourselves, and we have had many of the struggles that come in any program. But we also know the reward of seeing kids and adults hear the Word of God and know they are loved and that God's people care. That's why we partnered with Woodman Valley Chapel Access Ministry to create this video. We want to provide you some tips for managing behaviors and tools to help you in your program. We hope this video gives you practical things to manage your unique situation and gives you insights that will equip you for your success. After you watch this video, we would love your feedback, and at the end there will be a link you can go to leave us a comment and tell us any suggestions you have. And as always, if there is anything else we here at Need Project can do to support you, please reach out to us.
Hey everyone, my name is Emily Emerson and I am the Access Ministry Coordinator at Woodman Valley Chapel here in Colorado Springs. Now the purpose of our Access Ministry is to facilitate inclusion inside of the life of the church for the individual with exceptional needs and for their family. In support of our broader church mission, the goals of the Exceptional Needs Ministry are to lead the families affected by unique needs into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. We offer one-on-one buddies, specialized classes, respite care, and behavior support for individuals across 4 different campuses in Colorado Springs. In our world at Access, the terms additional needs, special needs, and disability encompass a broad range of unique needs, including but aren't limited to kids, students, and adults with learning differences, intellectual disabilities, neurological disorders, developmental delays, communication disorders, social skill deficits, physical disabilities, sensory needs, trauma impact, emotional and behavior disorders, and medical conditions. We could even walk alongside a student experiencing a significant life change for a period of time. Understanding why a particular individual requires the services of our ministry is often unimportant. What is important is that the ministry is able to assist identified individuals to help them experience success in the church setting. With such a variety of demographics amongst all of our campuses, we have the whole gamut of behaviors and needs on a Sunday morning in our kids' ministry. And let's be honest, as ministry leaders, we are in a tricky position. Our environment isn't the most consistent. We have volunteers serve every week, every other week, or maybe just once a month. Families miss a Sunday here and there for whatever reason, and new kids are coming and going every weekend. We don't have the benefit of providing consistency and routine for our kiddos like a school, home, or even a daycare does. We also ride a really thin line when it comes to behavior expectations. As a ministry, we want to encourage and hold kids accountable for the words that they say and the actions they do. We want to model grace and forgiveness, and we also need to keep order in an unfamiliar setting without being too harsh or too strict. We have kids with sensory processing difficulties, kids who are shy, kids who come from broken homes, kids with special needs, kids with lots of energy, kids who come from a traumatic background, and kids who are just weighed down by the expectations to be perfect. It is a lot to accommodate once a week for just a quick hour and a half with a team of volunteers who don't necessarily have the tools to walk alongside kids from hard places. And that's okay. In all of this chaos, we are met with a Savior who has it all under control. Every sweetie that walks into our classrooms knows that no matter what, they are safe and they are loved. All right, we are going to touch on some practical ways to create felt safety, structure, and clear expectations for any kid in our ministries. Before we jump right in, the first thing we need to do is surrender. We can read all the books, listen to every podcast, and attend every conference, but we cannot successfully minister to kids in our ministries without Jesus in the center of it all. Prayer is an important part of preparation. Every ministry needs to be bathed in prayer. As ministry leaders and volunteers, we must have a spirit of continuous prayer over our kids and their families. He hears us and knows what the ministry needs in order to minister to such a gamut of behaviors and needs. What do you need to do to create more space for prayer over the ministry you lead? Lean in and let Jesus show the way for your ministry. All right, now let's talk about behavior. Did you know that every behavior is some type of communication? And there are 4 functions of behavior. The first being escape. This is when the kiddo is avoiding work or an activity. Another function is attention. The child is making an effort to gain attention from their peers or from the adults around them. Behavior that is an attempt to get a preferred item or a preferred activity is the tangible function. The last function is sensory. This is behavior that occurs at least in part by a child's inability to effectively process sensory information in their environment. Dr. Karen Purvis puts it beautifully by saying our job as a trusted adult in kids' lives is to stay calm no matter what, see the need behind the behavior, find a way to meet the need, because if not you, then who? There are many things that we can do with hopes to prevent unwanted behavior. The most important thing we can do is build relationships with the kids, but especially with those who have exceptional needs. Those kiddos especially need repeated experiences early on that ultimately build those trusting relationships. It is a matter of being really intentional with a child and providing them with friendly facial expressions, getting down on their level, maintaining a positive voice inflection, practicing active listening, and providing playful engagement. Remember to take the time to get to know them and find some common interests the two of you share. Without a trusting relationship being established, the following strategies guarantee to fall flat. Predictability, transitional warnings, and clear and simple rules and expectations are vital to preventing unwanted behavior. Visual schedules are one of the ways to provide predictability because it provides boundaries around time. For kids with autism and other hidden disabilities, time is a really hard concept for them to grasp. When we put boundaries around time, that can be really helpful for them. Visual timers with verbal reminders of remaining time until a transition can also help provide a boundary for time. Hey, the Dollar Tree has great timers that are easy to use, and you don't have to worry about them getting demolished because they're such a great value. You can even have the student help you with keeping track of the time, or simply pushing the start button. It makes a big difference to them. One thing we often expect of kids is to naturally know the behavior expectations of every environment that they encounter. We must over-communicate our rules and expectations in every different environment that we present to them. Our campuses do this every single weekend. Kids start to know those expectations inside and out, and they know exactly what our teacher look means when they are doing something that they know they shouldn't be. I would encourage you to pick 3 to 4 positively stated, clear, and simple rules for every kid in your ministry to follow. Create a printed visual in each area that can be easily referenced by the volunteers or the kids themselves. Review these expectations at the beginning of every service, every weekend. Be on the lookout to verbally praise kids who are following the rules and expectations. When kids start to hear their peers being praised for positive choices, they will be eager to do the same with high hopes of being noticed too. If there's a child who needs their own personalized set of targeted behaviors, we have created individual visual slips. If Amani keeps hitting her friends, running around during the lesson, and shouting out, interrupting the teachers, then we would create a visual for her like this. Hands to myself, sit on the floor, raise my hand. These point out the alternatives to her unwanted behaviors and also teaches her exactly what is expected. You can even add an additional square that lists a reward if she follows those expectations for a certain amount of time. I would encourage you to keep the time frames for the incentives small at the beginning and then gradually increase that time as the weeks go by. Maybe she can earn a sticker or walk in the hallway with an adult, or maybe even a Play-Doh break. The incentive needs to be motivating for the kiddo or it won't work. You will naturally be giving the incentive pretty frequently at the beginning, but if you stick with it, the incentive breaks will become fewer and more manageable as the wanted behaviors become more natural for the kiddo in your environment. One strategy that I love to implement when a kiddo is having a hard time in one of our environments is a social story. Social stories clearly lay out things that they can expect in a certain environment. It addresses how to make good choices, what the schedule of the morning will be, and how they will feel, as well as how their parents will feel if they end up making good choices that morning. You can create one yourself, or you can adopt one you find to meet the needs of your kiddos themselves. This is a fun and easy way to personalize a strategy and allows them to have less anxiety or fear towards the unknown. I make a copy for the family and for the classroom. We ask that parents read the social story before church that morning, either at home or in the car when they're eating their breakfast, and then we read it when the kiddo comes into the class and gets all settled. This creates unity between the family, the child, and the church staff and volunteers. The child knows that everyone is on the same page. You can use a program like Boardmaker online to help you make this social story. Have you heard of first then statements? This is an easy way to communicate with kids in a clear and a direct way. You are providing them with something they need to do first, let's say clean up their toys. Next, you tell them what they will have access to when the first thing is completed. For example, Hannah, first clean up the baby doll clothes, then you can go outside. Stay consistent and patient. If you have to say the first then statement 15 times in a row, then that is what it'll take for the kids to know the expectation and what the boundaries are, and they have responsibilities. When you begin to see unwanted behaviors that are not putting the kiddo themselves in danger or anyone else in danger, take the time to provide redirection with a replacement activity. If our little friend Trevor is starting to throw toys, then try having him help you get the craft ready, or have him try a new activity with friends in a different area. If the kiddo is not receptive to the alternate activity that you provide, give them 2 choices that you can follow through with. For example, Trevor, you have 2 choices. You can play with Legos, keeping them on the ground, or you can sit at the table and color. One easy way to lose control of this situation is by changing the options of choices or by not following through. You want to provide a sense of control for the child by providing choices, but you need to keep the control as the adult by sticking to the boundaries set by the choices provided. One of the choices provided can be more of a consequence. For example, Trevor, you have 2 choices. You can play with Legos, keeping them on the ground, or you can clean the Legos up. If Trevor starts to throw those Legos again, then you immediately need to follow through with the consequence of having him clean up those Legos. There are times when kids need incentives to follow the preferred behaviors and to make good choices. If it comes to this, it is best to let the parents know. Hey, the parents might even have a reward chart or a token board that is used at home, therapy, or at school that you can replicate and use on Sundays. That's also a bonus because it brings more consistency for the child when they see everyone in their world is on the same page. Having the caregivers on board also makes the incentive much more effective. When using a reward chart or a token board, reiterate the goal to the child by asking, "What are you working for?" Keep the reward fresh and relevant to the motivation of the child for best results. It might change every Sunday or every different program. It is also very important that the child knows exactly what behaviors you are looking for in order for them to earn the reward. That is when the use of their own personalized visual behavior strip comes in handy, like we talked about before. Alrighty, sometimes kiddos lose connection to their upstairs brain, which that upstairs brain controls their decision-making skills, planning skills, the balance of their emotions and the balance of their body, their self-understanding and their ability to reflect or have empathy, or the skills to decipher between what's right and what's wrong. So, one strategy to implement before the child ends up in a tantrum or a meltdown because of that disconnection is to engage in physical activity. You can have the whole class or just that child engage in an active brain break by having them do wall push-ups, the crab walk, the bear crawl, jumping jacks, or even having a 30-minute dance party. There are also some pretty cool videos on GoNoodle.com that are kid appropriate and a lot of fun for all ages. Let's talk about fidgets. Fidgets are small gadgets that provide sensory input and also allows the child enough regulation to be able to still engage in what's going on around them. They can easily get out of control if boundaries are not made. Before any child receives a fidget from one of our volunteers or staff members, this visual is shown and explained to them. Fidgets must stay in your lap, they must stay quiet, and you still have to listen. We set the expectation that if any of those rules are broken, then the fidget will be taken away. It is super important that the fidget is indeed taken away if it's being misused after a couple warnings are given. If kiddos around the child who has the fidget start to become distracted or they want to fidget too, a simple reminder from the teacher or the volunteer to pay attention will do just the trick. If other students then start to ask for a fidget because it looks fun and exciting, but you're confident that they don't need one, simply tell them that the kiddo needs it to help them pay attention, and you are confident that they can pay attention without one. Don't be discouraged if it seems like the child using the fidget isn't really paying attention. I have been amazed time and time again by their ability to absorb the information going on around them, even when they are looking down at their fidget. It seems that they can absorb that information even better than when they don't have that fidget. So it really works, and it's an awesome tool if the boundaries are made for the child themselves and the kiddos around them. Alrighty, we know that the reality is, despite our best efforts and the use of these strategies, we will still have kiddos displaying inappropriate, harmful, or disruptive behaviors. When correcting unwanted behaviors with a child who has exceptional needs, our number one priority is maintaining and strengthening our trust-based relationship with them. Instead of sending a child to the traditional timeout zone, try having a time in with them, maybe just one-on-one. The goal is to bring the child closer versus sending him or her away. This gives you the opportunity to problem solve with them and not lecture or preach at them. During this time, you also need to focus on the child's value instead of focusing on their failure. In the time in, by giving them a chance to have a behavioral redo where they show the appropriate way to handle a situation, or by giving them clear choices of how to move forward. These strategies are bound to strengthen and maintain your relationship with a child, along with laying out firm boundaries and consequences. Let's take a moment to talk about the differences between a tantrum and a meltdown when it comes to sensory processing disorders. This knowledge will help you in responding to the child's behavior and assisting them. Tantrums are goal and control driven. The child knows exactly what they want their end goal to be and probably knows how to get it, hence the tantrum. The child is performing the tantrum for an audience. They are fueled by the attention received from either their peers or from the adults around them. The child will check for that engagement in the midst of a tantrum. When they get what they want, or if they realize they aren't going to get what they want, resolve is accomplished. The child is in control though. If you think about a toddler who doesn't get their way, they throw themselves on the floor. The mom walks away and the toddler gets up and follows her and then continues to throw themselves on the floor. That is a tantrum. They are in control, and it resolves when, again, they get what they want or they realize they're not getting what they want. The best thing to do when a child is having a tantrum at church is to ignore them. This lessens their fuel of attention from others. Be sure to let all the volunteers in the room know that the child needs to be ignored. Don't forget to keep an eye on them to ensure their safety, but don't feed into the tantrum. It's a tricky dance. If the child destroys material things or makes a mess out of the room, it is important to have them clean up when they are calm. This would also be a good time to bring the child close and to have a time in to discuss what could be done differently in the future. It is also important to help them in apologizing to others if they made any wrongs. Meltdowns, on the other hand, are completely different. It is a response to being overstressed or overwhelmed. It's a reactive mechanism. The meltdown continues without getting that attention. The child's safety may be compromised in a meltdown. They usually get really tired. Sometimes when you watch a child who's having a meltdown, they have a tendency for their bodies to become stiff. They might turn red or flushed. They sweat, and they sometimes get so tired that they end up falling asleep. A meltdown is not goal dependent, and it may in fact require assistance to gain back control. Now, a meltdown may very well start as a tantrum, but the difference is kids with challenging behaviors have the tendency to escalate into having those meltdowns. If it starts as a tantrum, chances are they will continue to lose control. The child starts to disengage from their environment. It's hard because tantrums and meltdowns have very similar physical responses: screaming, kicking, hitting, crying, etc. But we have to remember that the cause of the meltdown is very different. Meltdowns are caused by too much sensory information, which results in the child feeling overwhelmed. When the child gets to be overwhelmed, that leads to their fight or flight response. The escalation occurs quickly once sensory triggers occur and the child loses control. In addition to the strategies we have already discussed, here are some additional thoughts to preventing meltdowns. If our ministry is made aware of the child's exceptional needs prior to Sundays, part of our intake forms include the parent's description of what the child's triggers are, what the escalation looks like, and what specifically works for that child to de-escalate. It's very important information that can make a huge difference in the long run. When you have that information on a child because of their intake form or because of a past experience with them, consider all of the potential triggers and all the environments the child will be in that morning. Provide adaptations and accommodations to avoid those triggers. Remind the volunteers to provide a break for the child when they start to become restless or agitated. If an activity is overwhelming or overstimulating, remove the kiddo from the activity and allow them to watch from a comfortable distance. Most importantly, lower the demands that you're putting on that child and lessen your language to one-step directions or just gestures or even by using visuals. Because when you notice that the student is starting to escalate, you do not want to wait too long to remove them from the environment that is causing them to become overwhelmed. Provide the child with a short movement break or a calming break. It can even be in the hallway or a sensory room that you have at your church. When a meltdown still happens, no amount of redirection or intervention will help them get through it faster. The kiddo has to complete the meltdown in their own time. As much as it's against most of our natural instincts to jump in and to help, The best intervention is no direct intervention when a child is having that meltdown. Do your best to try to adjust the environment by maybe lowering the lights and the sound, and remove others from the room to give the child privacy and some space. Use a calm, reassuring voice to let them know that you're there with them and that they are safe. Our ministry will call parents out of service to assist with meltdowns. We don't want the child to leave church that Sunday morning traumatized, where they felt overwhelmed and out of control in a more unfamiliar place. We want to do our best in comforting them, and most of the time, the parents and the caregivers can do that right away for their child. All right, that was a lot of information with a lot of different strategies, but as ministry leaders, we have such a big responsibility to love our kiddos well and walk alongside them even when it's hard. For me, it's a joy and an honor because I get to see a sliver of Jesus' redemption and love for each one of his children. Remember that no child wants to be bad or wants to misbehave. Every behavior is a type of communication. Lean in, see the need, and meet the need, because if you don't, who will?